Lucky, what was the worst thing about being a POW?
Well, it's a question that's most asked of me, of all questions. And was it torture? Or was it solitary confinement? Or cold? Or heat? Or starvation? And none of those are it. Being away from my family and loved ones is the most depressing thing that can happen to a person. And that was what was the worst thing about being a POW.
How much do you hate the Vietnamese?
The Vietnamese were doing what they were ordered to do, just like I was doing what I was ordered to do. I have no hate, never had any hate. People who hate are people that it's like taking poison and hoping the other person dies. It just destroys you. Hate will just eat you up, and I won't allow that to happen to me.
Is it true you've written a book?
Yes, actually I have written a book. It was actually the first one that was printed after we were released from Hanoi. It was printed by Bookcraft in Salt Lake City. And it's a story in itself of how it came into existence. It's sold probably around 75,000 copies. It's back in print again now.
What number POW were you?
I was number 76 out of about 600. That made me eligible to come home with the first group of POWs when we were released, sick and wounded first, and then in order of shoot down. So I did get to come home with the first group.
Lucky, what are you passionate about?
Oh, I'm passionate about four things. I'm passionate about my God, my country, my family, and my friends. You ever had a prayer answered? Let me just tell you a quick one, little short story. It's about when I was first shot down and I was captured. They took my clothes from me except for my underwear and my socks. And I prayed that God would give me back my boots because I was afraid I'd have to walk a long way. And they did, within about a minute. And I never knew what a great blessing it was to have those boots until some 21 days when I got back to Hanoi and saw men who had worn their feet, meat off their feet down to the bone, who had walked into camp barefoot. I want to tell you a story about Jim Ray. I had beriberi in prison, and I lost over 65 pounds over about a 4-month period. Pain was excruciating, and one day I started to cry. Jim started yelling for the doctors. Well, a guard came in and started beating on me. I was lying on my bunk, and Jim threw him out of the room. After this, the guard took off his Ho Chi Minh sandal and started shaking it at Jim and threatening Jim. And Jim said, "If you hit me with that, I'll take it away from you and beat the hell out of you." Now, I need you to know that Jim didn't speak Vietnamese and the guard didn't speak English. Jim is 6'2", the guard's 5'2". But the guard left. A few minutes later, the guard came back with an English-speaking officer, and Jim was railed on pretty severely, threatened with all kinds of torture, but they left. And when they left, Jim and I got on our knees and prayed that God would soften the hearts of our enemies. And they didn't come back that night, so that was good news. The next morning was Tet, and they took Jim and I out very early, and I thought this is going to be trouble for Jim. But it was Tet, and they usually on their holidays give us a sugar cookie and a cup of tea. This was no different. This morning was Tet, sugar cookie, and a cup of tea. And when we got ready to leave, the officer said to Jim, "Jim, you cannot hit our guards and go unpunished. Go stand in a corner for 1 minute." And that was his punishment. Jim and I believe in a God that can soften the hearts of our enemies. I also love my family. I I can't tell you the feeling that I had when my mother and father hugged me in my hospital room and we cried. It was like coming home from the dead. It wasn't like coming home from a mission or from school or from even being over in the war. It was like coming home from the dead. And I just can't imagine going throughout eternity without that love and feeling that I had for my parents. When we got home, we weren't treated like the other Vietnamese veterans. We were treated as heroes, and the people treated us very, very, very good. But I want you to know that we were Vietnam veterans. And I think one of the things that happened because of us and because of how badly the Vietnam vets were treated, that people have gone out of their way in this day and age to be grateful to the military that are serving in the military today. You see it all the time on TV where people are doing great things to help those that are serving in the military. My country, I love this country. I am grateful for my citizenship in this country. I'm grateful for the Constitution and those great men that wrote it. I have my opponents that speak about freedom, and yet neither one of them have ever done anything to prove that they love their country like I have. I proved it 76 times when I laid my life on the line flying missions over North Vietnam. On number 76, I was shot down and captured and spent 2,494 days as a prisoner of war in North Vietnam. I really do love my country. My own family, my wife divorced me while I was in prison. I remarried when I got home. Annette and I had no children for about 4 years, and so we went to the Lord and said, we need children, and so we got children. We got 6 children within 15 months. She had a baby, we adopted 3, she had another baby, and we had a Navajo boy living with us. Instant family. You got to be careful what you pray for, you might get it. Annette got pregnant again, and she had another baby. And on the way to church to give a baby a blessing on July the 5th, 1981, a train hit the car that I was driving and killed my wife and my baby. And 7 years in Hanoi was easy compared to looking at the crushed skull of my wife and baby. I remarried a girl named Judy Chesley. Yeah, that's right, Chesley. Her name was Chesley. All of our kids, we had 9 kids from 4 sets of parents. All of them were named Chesley. That was the good part of it. We've had some successes and we've had some failures, but I am so grateful for my family. We have 29 grandkids, and that's really what's fun, having grandkids. I have friends. I don't want to talk about friends because I'll leave somebody out, but I do want to just tell you that Jim Ray is my dear friend. What he did for me was beyond the call of duty. It showed that he loved me more than he actually loved himself. I've had 2 friends die within the last 3 weeks. One of them was my clerk, and one of them was my executive secretary when I was the bishop. And it makes life have real meaning that we're all going to die. But they were good friends. Ken Ellsworth, when my cow would get out, go down to his pasture, he'd bring her home. Bob Jarman went during political campaigns, helped me put up signs. I loved those 2 men, and I am going to truly miss them. But I have other friends. And I am so grateful for all those that are helping me in my campaign. Oh, I ought to at least mention some issues. Politicians talk about what they're going to do and how great they're going to be, and well, actually I've been there and done that as a state senator, and you have to work with 90 people, and I have the skills to do that. I am pro-family, pro-marriage, and pro-life. I am pro-Second Amendment. I'm a very strong advocate for gun laws. we need to get government out of business in our own personal lives. I am for cutting taxes and making the business of government more efficient. I am a conservative. I'm a known quantity. I was #1 friend of the taxpayers when I served in the state senate in the 1990s.